guys okay? Awesome.
So, 1.8 hours. That's the amount of time McKinsey estimates the average employee will spend looking for information every single day. What could you do with an additional 1.8 hours in your day? What could your Salesforce users be doing with an additional 1.8 hours in their day? Granted, some of that is core to your job, time spent doing value-added tasks, but the lion's share is due to inefficiencies in the knowledge gathering process. And those are the inefficiencies that we're here to talk about today.
Great. Hi, everyone. We are Melanie and Zari, the co-founders of Spekit.
Woohoo!
And we're here today to talk about a problem that we felt firsthand when working at a company together just a few blocks away. Now, I was on the sales and operations side of the company. She was on the product side of the company. And we'd implemented Salesforce. And my responsibilities were really around change management and training and onboarding our users. And I was doing all of this in PowerPoint presentations and in spreadsheets and in these really long Word manuals. And unfortunately, our end users just didn't know where to go to find information when they get stuck. I didn't know who to communicate these changes to because I didn't know what teams were using it, the latest version of our report.
I was on the product side working on a web app with our own internal database, all of which needs to integrate with Salesforce, of course. And I was living in constant fear of breaking things because Salesforce was constantly changing, the app was constantly changing, and our engineers didn't even have licenses to Salesforce, so it was just like this constant catch-up game. And the core reason that I realized was because our knowledge was scattered, right? Your Salesforce is living way over here in its own little silo, and then there's your knowledge. It's in PowerPoints, it's in spreadsheets, it's in Word docs, it's in someone's brain, it's in different help sites, and really, it's leading to all this time sink, and your employees really don't know where to find the information they need. And it got us thinking, what if there was a way to combine your knowledge with your CRM and actually unlock what is inevitably a massive investment, you know?
So one day we were on the beach and we started thinking through, well, what would this solution look like? Well, we wanted to build a knowledge base that combined the aspects of a traditional data dictionary, a solution where you document things about your data, such as who uses it and why it was created, with a wiki where you can actually build content and videos that anyone in your company can access. And we wanted this information to be available to the end user in context. And that's how Spekit came to life. It's a knowledge base that's built from your data model with an in-context learning component. Now, who is Spekit for? Well, having seen the problem from multiple different angles in the company, we wanted to design a solution that was both for your Salesforce users and your non-Salesforce users, for the admin and for the end user, for the developer, anyone that needed to access information in your company. And why is that? Because we wanted to eliminate the silos of information that get created within companies as they grow, and give them a unified solution where whether you were looking up knowledge through the API name, or whether you were looking it up through the keyword or label, you could derive the same messaging, the same content to deliver to your customers or to your internal employees, all in a centralized location. Now, how does it work? Well, because change is the constant, and your Salesforce org is probably the best reflection of that, we wanted to leverage what you've already spent time building, which is your Salesforce data model, and build your knowledge off of that. So Spekit connects to your Salesforce org and allows you to import your objects, your fields, and other metadata that you can then use as a foundation to your knowledge base. You can then add videos and knowledge and images to build on that content and create that centralized knowledge repository for your business. But more importantly, having managed end users and having been responsible for really training them, we know that in order for the end user to access that information, it needs to be where they need it, right in their workflow. Which is why we created a Chrome extension that allows them to surface the information from Spekit right in their Salesforce workflow, so that if they're looking at a stage, they know exactly what that business process is, as well as in their email, so that if they're getting a customer request with one of your product names and they want information on that product, they don't need to go searching through your product page or whatever collateral is sitting elsewhere in a PowerPoint. We also have a number of customers that rely on Outlook for their day-to-day, which is why we just released an Outlook integration that allows you to surface the same content right in your end user's workflow in their email. And lastly, our Lightning component, because we know that the world is going mobile and more people are either working remote, on their phones, on the field, so we wanted to give them that same knowledge available to them through their phone as well. Now, I could go on for hours about why I think having in-context and centralized knowledge is so critical to any proper Salesforce implementation. But I'd rather have my friend Mark here, who's been a Salesforce consultant in the ecosystem for a number of years, speak a little bit about his experience.
So there are lots of things I can tell you about documentation that I've learned over the years, but I want to tell you a little story from early in my career, because this is something that has absolutely stuck with me. So I was working in an organization and we had just redone the entire opportunity processes. And that is like the heart of almost every organization. And we reworked it, we rechanged everything, we documented it, and the person who knew it best in that org left from that business group. And all that information was lost. We tried to put it in these little tiny help text bubbles, those didn't work. We tried putting it externally, those didn't work. And so I learned you have to go every direction possible with this to make it available. But that's a lot of work, and that's why I was so excited when I saw Spekit, and that's why I'm so excited for Melanie and Zari to show you just how easy Spekit can make your documentation for you.
Great. Thanks so much, Mark. Now, if this was helpful to you, we've actually learned a ton from Mark over the last 6 months as he was helping us think through what kinds of features would be most helpful to the end user. And we actually have a webinar coming up on October 8th to help get you guys started on your documentation journey as well, where he'll be sharing a number of best practices around API naming conventions and things like that to get you started. So here's the sign-up code if you'd like to join. Now, let's get started with the demo.
Demo time.
So let's get started with the most obvious example of a use for Spekit, which is the opportunity stage. Now, this stage is critical to revenue forecasting, to pipeline accuracy. Yet so many end users get stuck on what the nuances and the steps that are required to move from one stage to the next. So using Spekit, you can simply hover over our icon, and within seconds, the end user will have access to everything that you've documented, that process, right there in context. You can scroll through and even add images or videos that might help your end users understand that process in more detail. You can also assign what we call a data expert. That is someone in your organization that can help you contribute to that knowledge. Now, that can be an admin, or it could be a team manager. Because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be one person's responsibility to document the knowledge for your company. There are power users, there are team managers that can help you with that. So now they know who to ask if they get stuck. Melanie, for example. Now, on that same note, we wanted to give an easy way for data experts to actually contribute this knowledge, so that when they get tapped on the shoulder by an end user saying, hey, what do I do here? I can't remember. They can actually go in right there with their data expert role and edit that content right in their workflow as well. So that as that information is fresh in their minds, they can go in and document it for their teams. And just like that, they've multiplied the value of their answer, not that one time they answered that one individual via Slack or email, but for every end user afterwards that has that question. Great, so that covers the most basic use case for Spekit. Now let's take a look at when your user doesn't even know where to get started. Whether you just migrate to Lightning and they don't know this new user interface, or whether they just joined your company, they can easily use our Chrome browser here, or our Chrome sidebar. And what you see here are related knowledge cards. So by object, you can create your own content that you relate to a specific object, so that when they open that sidebar, they immediately have access to those articles right there. Think of individual wiki pages. They can also search for specific content. So let's say they couldn't remember how to create a report. They know it's possible, but they don't even know where to get started. Well, they can search for the keyword report, and within seconds have access to a number of search results, such as this step-by-step right there in context, showing them this is where you click, this is where you save, and this is what you do. So this covers basically how to use Spekit in Salesforce, but as we explained earlier, we wanted to make sure that this content was available to them outside of Salesforce as well. So let's say your user's in their email and someone asks them this email and they can't remember what that acronym means. Now they can simply hover over the acronym and type the letter S, and it'll search Spekit for a relevant match. In this case, we used to work in a real estate org where we had all these loan policies that were constantly changing with market fluctuations, and we wanted an easy way to push that information to the end user. So you can do that right there, and within seconds they have access to all the information they need to answer that customer. Now what if that keyword doesn't exist? Well, they can hover over and we'll look for relevant matches, any other content that you have that might be relevant to the end user as well, such as what is a dashboard or how to create a dashboard. And as we explained earlier, this works in Gmail, but it works anywhere in your browser. So if you have other internal systems that you use that have similar keywords or terminology, you can document it in Spekit and have the same functionality. It also works in Outlook. So if the end user is in Outlook and they want to access this same information there because that's where they spend most of their time, they can simply search the sidebar and access not just the knowledge, but the content as well. So they can actually copy over that content straight to an email so that within seconds, they not only have consistent messaging with the rest of your employees, but have saved time looking for that content. Great, so hopefully this has given you an overview of how Spekit works in context to give your employees the knowledge they need in their workflows. Now let's take a look at where all this is actually documented. So as we mentioned, Spekit is connected to your Salesforce because we believe that instead of building it from scratch, you should build it from what you already have built in your data model. So you can connect to Salesforce here and select which objects you'd like to import, which standard, custom, or even install package objects that might be helpful to document for your users. Those are then imported into the data wiki. I'm going to take a second here to explain what we mean by data wiki. So earlier I said we wanted the aspect of a data dictionary, right? Where you could track all the data that you need about a particular data point or about a particular object right there in context, which is why we have this tabular format that's similar to a spreadsheet. You can create your own column attributes so that you can track integrations, things of that sort. But then when you actually click into any one of these particular objects or fields, you actually get access to that more wiki-style format that's more conducive to learning. So that when your employee joins the company, and let's say they join the support team, and you're like, hey, here's a set of knowledge that you can go into the app and learn one by one at your own pace, they can simply use this format here. And it's organized by definition, business process, and then all the metadata that we've pulled in, or custom attributes that you've created. They can scroll through from one card to the next to access this information as well, or even go to the related knowledge cards on the opportunity to see all the related knowledge to that particular object right there. Now what you can see here are some knowledge cards that I'll be announcing in just a few minutes that actually come out of the box with Spekit. So we know that the hardest part with getting started is actually creating the content. So we've created a number of cards that are kind of standard FAQ that end users have to get your users started. They come out of the box with Spekit, and they're not only available here, they're available through the Chrome extension as well, such as that how to create a report card. Great, and lastly, in order to actually crowdsource this content and easily get this knowledge built in Spekit, we wanted to give you an easy way to crowdsource and delegate this information. So what Zari is doing right here, she's actually selecting all the different knowledge cards that might pertain to a particular department or to a particular team and delegating a specific user to them. And they'll get an email telling them, hey, Astra, you've just been assigned this particular field, this particular paperless value, because you're the expert here, and we'd like you to go ahead and document it. And just like that, and you can assign it back. And just like that, you've now have an easy way to delegate what you need your end users to build. So that'll conclude the demo for now, but before we end here, I want to recap a couple things. So, as we mentioned, Spekit is centralized. It is all stored in one specific location, which is your web app. It is scalable because it is built from your data model as a foundation, so that as you add a business line, as you pivot, as you add fields or objects, all of this knowledge automatically gets pulled in to Spekit so that you can make sure that your knowledge is staying up to date. And more importantly, it is in context, because we know that for knowledge to actually be leveraged by your end users, it needs to be embedded in their workflow, because learning is circular. People only remember about 10% of the knowledge that they hear the first time they hear it. So how can we make sure that the end users have the access and information they need? It needs to be right there in context. Now, as we mentioned earlier, we do have some out-of-the-box content. So those Salesforce 101 cards we were discussing earlier, some of them are for Lightning, some of them are for Classic, but they basically answer those basic walkthroughs to get you started so that your end users have quick access to that and it's no burden on your shoulders and you can really focus on creating your custom content. We also created a set of knowledge cards for NPSP. Because we know a number of our clients use NPSP and they struggle with onboarding their end users on how to use it. And so that is the out-of-the-box content. Oops, skipping ahead here. And lastly, do I have any consultants in the room? No? Well, we do work with a number of consultants and they basically told us that they found themselves constantly repeating the same thing over and over again to their clients. So we wanted to give them an easy way to basically create their own set of proprietary content that they can create in Spekit, they can then export and reuse with any client. So that just like that, they're not just bringing efficiency to their workflow, but they're multiplying the value of their content and their implementation across all their clients, and ensuring that the end users actually adopt those expensive changes that you just implemented in their work.
Awesome. And then finally, something new that we're working on that I'm excited to share with you is not making this a one-way street from the expert or the manager to the viewer, but actually letting your teams give you feedback on the content, the help content that you create, letting you know what is most viewed, what is most helpful, what is most confusing, so you can actually take action on it. So it's not a one-time static data wiki. It is a living, breathing document. And that's why we're excited to add that strip to our dashboard very soon.
And as you saw earlier, in the Chrome extension, we basically have a way to star terms or thumbs up or thumbs down, so that if the end users in Salesforce and they're like, wait, I'm still not clear on this, they can give you that thumbs down so that on the dashboard you know, hey, this might need to be revisited. Or you can look at the content that's really, really helpful and see, wow, I'm doing something right here. Let me make sure that all my content is consistent.
Exactly. So that's it for the demo. And now that you guys have seen the product, I'd like to ask you that same question one more time. What could you do with an additional 1.8 hours in your day? And what do these inefficiencies that we talked about look like in your organization? So we're at booth 25. If any of this that we talked about today resonated with you, or if it's made you think of other use cases, other user experiences, we would love to hear from you. Please come talk to us. We're right there, booth 25. Thank you.